Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks for that great introduction. It's like I wrote it myself. If any of you want to move closer, there's no exploding watermelons or balloons or anything. If you want to move closer, can everyone hear me? Still in the back, good? Okay. Today what we're going to talk about is holistic network protection, which is looking at an entire network as opposed to just looking at individual pieces and trying to secure individual pieces as they come in. One of the major things we'll also be talking about is software-defined networks. Yesterday, Mr. Campbell from Sienna Technologies, I believe, was talking about software-defined networks. He had a lot of information to get in on 1 hour. And it was a very good presentation, had a lot of players. If you were there at that presentation, he had a lot of vendors, a lot of customers, and it's a lot to handle right now. Software-defined networking has been around, or the concept has been around for about 5 years. And I think they gave me a clicker thing here. Let's see if it works. So today we're going to learn how to understand holistic network protection and how it works with just some fundamental concepts and examples. I'm also going to offer you 3 industry examples that could apply in the DoD space. And I'll tell you why as we go along. Attendees will learn how this holistic network protection leverages the entire network, utilizes the entire network, employs cloud-based threat defenses, and I have a whole bunch of information for you on that, and contains elements of centralized dynamic policy engines. Hi, come on in. So we're going to break it up into 5 topics. Threat trend landscape, today's approach to CND, computer network defense, that would be traditional cybersecurity techniques, components of holistic network protection, and high-level architectural examples that we'll be using to hopefully deploy in your space. And some concluding thoughts. There might be some other things thrown in there, too. And if you have any questions at any time, just either blurt them out, throw something at me, or raise your hand. Yeah, that throw something at me gets my attention. And any of you, as a professor, I used to throw things at my students, as Jerry knows very well. So let's look at the threat trend landscape right now. So our adversaries are everywhere, and our techniques are increased. Their techniques are increasing. We need to stop outside and inside threats as well, and that includes having a zero trust posture. Our adversaries are increasing their sophistication of hacking with very low-cost equipment and very low-cost code. It doesn't take much to infiltrate a network undetected. It doesn't take much to infiltrate that network, look around, and then leave that network undetected. We also have increasing variability with the Internet of Things, mobile devices, lots of simple code out there. I run a simple code on my phone, a USSD code that connects it to my microcell at my house. Easily hackable. We have insider threats. It could be planted or human. We used to call them logic bombs. Now they call them ghostware. Capturing data in transit and exfiltration of data in motion, not just data at rest. I heard a panel yesterday talk about how exfiltration of data is a big deal. It's a big deal. And yes, it's a big deal. But everybody thinks it's coming out in one big burst. But as we saw with the OPM breach, that's not what happened. They were in there for a while, taking little pieces at a time. I'll just take this and take that, and then all of a sudden they had the whole ball of wax. Yesterday, General Hodges mentioned something about U.S. Cyber Command and Admiral Rogers. So I thought I would bring up some information about that because I had a chance to hear him testify or in a hearing on Capitol Hill. I don't know if it was a hearing or testifying or just a status report, but he was talking about our cyber threats. And one of his main topics was how our cyber dominance needs to improve in some of our branches of government, or some of our branches of the military, I mean. A broader context for cyber protection and security is not yet achieved. Some of these are actual quotes. I have quotes in my notebook if you want me to check them for you. Russia is our biggest threat, but Iran is increasing their investment and level of activity and sophistication. It's also easy for state actors to recruit young coders or young people into like saying, hey, you want to do something really cool to the biggest power force on the planet? And it's easy for state actors to get newer people into their fold. Cyber attacks could invoke NATO Article 5, so attack against one is an attack against all, which is also in General Hodges' video yesterday that he showed. Cybercom still does not actually have a firm definition of cyber attack. I've been in this business for 30 years, 30, how many, 31 years? Okay. And when we had the term cybersecurity, it went to information security, and then went back to cybersecurity, and nobody still has, like, the standard definition of cybersecurity. Like, what is it? You know, you ask people on the street. I actually did that once. I said, what do you think cybersecurity is? It's like protecting the internet. Pokemon Go, you know. Isn't that a great intelligence collection device? Pokemon Go. We get maps, we get locations, we get pictures, we get people, we get houses. Are any of you playing Pokemon Go right now? Any Pokemon in here? No? Sorry. And the readiness stance in the future, Admiral Rogers was talking about, was will increase the total breadth of cyber support, including leveraging the National Guard, which in the last panel right before lunch, they talked about, or there was a question about leveraging the National Guard and how are we going to do that? And how are we doing that? How is the Army doing it? That was a great question, and that it was like it came straight out of Fort Meade, you know, so that was kind of interesting. I was like, hey, somebody was listening to Admiral Rogers, all right. So what do our military leaders need to know? Well, we all know it's a when event, not a if event, right? We can start looking at cloud economics and maybe decrease costs through our cloud service providers or CSPs. For example, our intelligence community has a giant investment in Amazon Web Services. Cloud and cybersecurity must have a risk management framework and policy foundation before any applications can be deployed. And we also have to be FedRAMP compliant. Don't forget that. Our perimeter hardening, or building a moat around the network, is no longer enough. Data at rest, data in motion, data archived, data in backup state need inline and end-to-end encryption. And hopefully when I go to the industry examples, this might become a little more clear. These concepts are starting to get a little muddied. And practice resilience scenarios, red, blue team exercises. There's one here, isn't there? There's one on the list. Mark, go ahead and say that. This is Mark Wiggins from Juniper Networks. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, so it's good to always have red, blue team exercises and run those sorts of things. Here's some more ideas. These don't come from anyone but Danny Zeedick, your speaker. How do we ensure personnel training on security awareness from password strength? If any of you went to the password conundrum yesterday, anybody go to that? What is the conundrum? Don't use a sticky note. Don't put it on the ceiling. Don't stick it on your... What was the conundrum? Make them strong and long, right? Yeah. Right. And then you have single sign-on, which can also be vulnerable as well. But I hear over and over, and even at the last panel on... What was that last panel, Paul? Yeah, Cyber Protection Brigade. Every session I have been to at this conference, there's 2 days, right? But they all talk about personnel training. Training personnel. Personnel training personnel. And it's also about awareness and keeping up that training and keeping up with the changes that we have. And how are... Speaking of how do we keep up with things, anomalous signatures detected and stopped. Are we employing good practices that recognize unknown virus signatures or similar signatures that mimic maybe older viruses, and how do we stop them? And what sort of software is out there to do that? The Defender's Dilemma is a RAND report, and I have a note on that here somewhere. It's 162 pages, so you'll probably be reading it. When I speak, I like to give people some resources to go to. That's the link for the report, and it's a survey of chief information security officers and talks about efficacy of security systems, improving software, lessons for public policy. But the one thing is the heuristic cybersecurity model. Does anybody know what that is? Does anybody know what heuristic means? Go ahead.
Something to do with behaviors?
Right, right. It's detecting heuristic cybersecurity, and I kind of touched on it before, is when your software or your network looks at unknown virus signatures or anomalous behavior and stops it. Or looks at something that's similar. It's like, you kind of look bad. Like, I got 2 Navy guys over here, right? I know one is bad, and then the one follows. Hey, he's kind of the same, so I'm going to stop him too. Nothing against Navy. Some of my favorite people commissioned. It's a really good report about how we are always catching up. It's like we're either this far behind or this far behind our adversaries. And that our technology and our techniques sometimes lag behind. And I know we're all working on that. Any questions so far? Time? I have no idea what time it is. Okay. 45 minutes? Come on, people. This is nap time, right? Right after lunch? This is the nap time one. Oh, thank you. I'm going to make her my time thing. Because these guys didn't want to do it. No one else wanted to do it. But thank you. I don't know. Fortinet had a little spotlight on CNBC about the threat landscape. Well, Gartner has said that this year there's going to be 6.8 billion connected devices, right, of various ilks. This thing, my laptop, that laptop, my refrigerator. Everybody's concerned that their food's going to go bad. You shouldn't be concerned that your food's going to go bad. You should be concerned that your refrigerator is going to be a gateway to another network. But they talked about one of the threats being brand new, very simple malware intrusions, like ghostware. Malware that's placed in the computer, covers up its tracks on the way out after it deploys. So there's no signature. There's no signature. I cannot remember who I was talking to, but they said kinetic warfare doesn't bother me as much as cyber warfare, because cyber warfare, there's not always a return address. And that's true. And that's true. When we want to jailbreak the cloud, right? Everything wants to go to the cloud. Everything's in the cloud. Everything is safe in the cloud. We're all safe in the cloud, right? Pictures in the cloud. Tax return in the cloud. Battle plans in the cloud. It's all safe because we have turned it over to a cloud service provider. So the new challenge to our cyber adversaries is jailbreaking the cloud. Just breaking in. Now, since I've been in this business longer than a lot of you have been alive, I've seen a lot of things repackaged as old things repackaged as new things with a little bit of innovation on top. Perhaps some of you older people are going, yes, I've seen the same thing. And, we look at newer kinds of profiles for our adversaries and their threat profiles. We also have two-faced malware. We have, what is that, blastware. Oh, I love blastware. It just goes in, and we used to call it a logic bomb a long time ago in the 90s, where it would be planted by somebody, maybe a contractor, maybe an insider threat individual, maybe just somebody hacking in from Iceland. I don't know. And through Iceland, I should say. And it will deploy at a particular date and time. Could be 6 months from now, could be a year from now, right? And the two-faced malware is kind of nice. It's ingenious, but we need to be aware. And how do we protect against something that's coming into the network, or traffic that's coming into the network that looks benign? It's like, oh yeah, that looks normal. It's an email from Paul over here. He's just sending me pictures from his vacation. It looks benign, but then when it gets into the network, and say somebody opens the email or downloads something, or it's just injected by one of our adversaries, then it turns into the blob and just starts replicating, multiplying, goes in. Its sole purpose is to destroy the network, not necessarily exfiltrate data. Sure, take the data, then destroy the network. Hey, there's a double whammy right there. So anyway, that report is kind of interesting if you're not falling asleep after lunch and you have some problems falling asleep later. It's actually pretty good. And it is the RAND Corporation who has always been very supportive and does a lot of research in cybersecurity, very supportive of the military to I'm sure you've all heard of this in your schools. Yeah. So what do? Everything on our networks, including our light bulbs and our refrigerators in our smart homes, are threats, right? Are vulnerable to threats. Normal operations will have call home beacons, and we can decrease our energy utilization. But when we recognize abnormal behavior, bursting traffic, abnormal high data download rates, slow data exfiltration is my thing. It's like these, it's like, abnormal behavior on a network does not come in a giant burst, like a truck through the window of a store. It's much stealthier. Go ahead. It's like ants, right? The little brown ones in the summer. They just all of a sudden show up, and then all of a sudden leave. What's that? And they come access through different access points. Does anyone have like a smart wired home with sound? And does anybody have one of those houses? I don't. You do? Well, unless the company that you hired to do that secured your home, it's an entry point to flicker your lights, go into your personal computers, through your router to Comcast or whoever your provider is, expose your tax returns, all of that. Mark, did you have a question? You're just wiggling? Stop that. Okay. I work with Mark, so just letting you know. So how do we recognize what is normal traffic? What is normal traffic on your network? And you're going to have to figure that out. Any questions? This is the next chunk. Yeah. No questions? Is this interesting? Okay. I'll take the nod over here.
So far it sounds like we're on board with analyzing.
Yeah, that's what we're doing, right? So, computer network defense today, right? Multiple types of nodes in the architecture. We do a lot of perimeter, build the moat, build the hard candy coating shell, and leave everything alone on the inside, hoping that we have passwords to get into our particular software, application software. Risk management frameworks, in my opinion, you have to have them and you have to follow them. And the one for DoD is number what, Paul Zippel? No, 8570 is certifications. Yeah. If you don't have foundational policy, I'm not talking about technical policy, I'm talking about structure, organizational policy. Risk management, vulnerability management, and exploit management will fail, technically. And that's my opinion. That is not the opinion of my company, nor is it the opinion of my country. That's just my personal opinion. The metrics of success, the total number of attacks stopped versus the reduction of risk using a risk framework. Look at that. And there are good risk frameworks out there. The intelligence community has one, NIST has one, DoD has one, and they're all very similar. Yes, ma'am.
It's very difficult metric to capture, though, because if you're doing things right, a lot of times you won't see something that was attempted and didn't get through.
Well, on the network, you have that metric because you see what's come in and what is attempting to come in and what's refused. So you see what hits the perimeter and bounces back. And those are done through log files and other reporting capabilities of your network. Attackers, one of our challenges is attackers are always gaining, attempting to stay ahead because they're becoming more sophisticated, faster, and have a different mindset than they used to. So here's a look at the enterprise perimeter security model. Security layered on top of the network, the hard shell. The trust model, we'll just trust what's inside the network. We have visibility to the outside, relies mostly on the perimeter firewalls. And we're always having constant threats. This is traditional cybersecurity. Who knew we would have that word, traditional cybersecurity? And now we have to go to the next level. So we can't just protect the outside of the network anymore and then try to go in. We have to look at the entire network. So the emerging challenge is the Internet of Things, right? I went to the Internet of Things Summit from Afcea, and Mr. Pellegrino was speaking, and he was talking about how many nodes are on our battlefield. We have people, we have planes, we have tanks, we have robots, we have drones, we have communication devices. And how do we communicate quickly with them? And those are all kinds of different things. They're not just computers hooked to a server anymore like they were 30 years ago. The battlefield network has changed. We still have to talk about metrics of success in the battle space, the kinetic battle space as well as the cyber battle space. And he also said that attackers are always gaining and attempting to stay ahead of us and becoming more sophisticated. As I sit through this conference, in many Afcea breakfasts that I've gone to in Crystal City in DC, or just outside of DC, that I hear the same things: personnel training, sophistication is growing in our cyber adversaries. They're always trying to stay ahead. I mean, and this is from many, many different people, different levels in the military, different levels in industry. And one thing that was talked about was that we need more bandwidth so we can talk to people faster on the battlefield. Because as soon as comms go down and you don't know where your people are, or your tanks are, or your helicopters are, that's an issue. So he brought up some really good points at that breakfast. So what we need to start doing is changing the way we look at cybersecurity. No hard candy shell, no moat with alligators. The alligators are the firewalls. I mean, we still should do that, keep those up, but what else are we supposed to do? We should start talking about secure networks and not network security. So we realize the threats are everywhere. We recognize that the perimeter isn't secure enough. We need to engage in proactive and not reactive management of our threats. And sure, there is going to be some reactive management. We can decrease the damage control by being a little more proactive when a reactive event happens. So what stands in the way of us being more proactive? That's a question. I'm not going to answer it. Ma'am?
For the military side, military training pipeline tends to be very, go to school, you learn a specific way to do things, you go to your unit, you do it a specific way. Anything, a lot of times, especially in information technology, it's all handled by contractors anyway. But it's very, like, the WinT configurations are all built by General Dynamics, and you have to be a wizard to understand what any of it means. And if you're like E6 or below, you can't touch it. If you're a warrant officer, you might be able to touch it, but you're probably blowing off formation anyway.
Okay.
The first part of the problem. The second part is there are so many threats, such a changing environment. It's very difficult to be proactive, even from the military side.
So you're talking about culture change? Okay. Yeah. So we need to have an entire culture change to think, to have a change in mindset about how to protect these networks in a more proactive, innovative, modern manner. Anything else preventing us from doing this, sir?
So is there culture change the way that the organization is at this point?
I don't know, because we haven't changed the culture. But it will change the risk management framework. Yeah. Yeah. Everything, as the culture changes, everything has to be adjusted for that culture. But again, it has to be more proactive. And we talk about that a lot too. It's like proactive. You know, you go to the doctor once a year, just in case. But there are so many legacy systems, different kinds of nodes, vehicles and people, and regular traditional laptops that we need to make sure that they are protected. And security, I always tell everybody this, cybersecurity and security in general is a people problem. It is everyone's responsibility. It is not a machine problem. It's a people problem. You need to be trained and aware, and that's the entire workforce, even those not involved in network administration. Thank you. Thank you for saying I told you I wasn't going to answer. Yes, and I'm sitting up here talking about, you know, doom and gloom, and then the magical unicorn of the budget comes in and gives you all the money you want, right? So there's a balance that there's somehow the balance must happen, and our adversaries are gaining on us in the meantime. General Hodges, his speech yesterday just sticks in my head for some reason, is the interoperability of our networks and even our personnel. You know, his XO was German, from the German military, right? I'm sorry, go ahead. Chief of Staff, sorry. Yeah, I mean, if everything's going to work together, then we need to protect it in different ways. So let's talk about components of holistic network. How am I doing on time, ma'am?
You have 23 minutes remaining.
Oh, dear. I better hurry up.
That's including questions, Matt, if you want any.
Questions? Well, I'm trying to draw them out, but some of them are sleeping, so I don't want to interrupt that. Is availability, integrity, and security are the characteristics of holistic network protection. Why don't you just take out the word holistic, right? Networks always need to be agile. They always need to have integrity, and they always need to have security. All right? But because of the different kinds of nodes and because of the interoperability of our forces worldwide, we need to be agile, flexible, dynamic, and adaptable all the time. Holistic network protection also includes people, applications, data, infrastructure, and all the operating systems you can think of. And it's not just Linux and Windows. It's all the varieties of Linux. It's Unix in its purest form. Oh, and that Apple thing. Yeah. So holistic network protection also contains many elements of software-defined networks, where everything should be virtualized. Software runs separately from the hardware or hovers above or is disaggregated from the hardware. And it's been around as a concept for, I want to say 5 years, because I read a study from the University of Beijing on holistic network protection through identity access management through IAM. And so that was a while ago. And as the cloud becomes more prevalent for threat intelligence Network adaptability is key. Now, everybody thinks the cloud is going to be our solution. Does everybody think that? Have you been told that? The cloud? Has everybody been told that? Yeah, I've been told that. The cloud will solve all our problems, right? So there have been lots of the Cloud Security Alliance have put out the treacherous 12, right? The 12 threats to the cloud. And it looks just like the 12 threats to traditional networks, or networks today, or the networks we're going to build tomorrow. You can also download that. I think it's not too many pages. Let me see what my note says here. 35 pages. Not too bad. And they use the STRIDE model for threat analysis from Microsoft. Has anyone ever heard of the STRIDE model? It includes 5 components: spoofing identity, I have to look at my notes, tampering with data, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of privilege. One of the things I also, before I forget, wanted to say was, when we set up our networks and we put new printers on and we put new nodes on and we break things out of that brand new box and get that new smell of computer, right? That new computer smell, right? We need to change, and this might be the only note you take during this lecture, is you need to remember that there are default passwords on those endpoints. And you need to have a policy on how to change or remove those endpoint passwords, because I can come right in through your printer or your copier or your fax machine. Anything that has an IP address can be infiltrated. Lots of organizations I have worked with did not know that, or did not change the default password on printers that came in, network printers that come in. Just kind of a big red warning sign there. So we're going to talk about 3. Oh, any questions before I move on to our 3 examples? We're going to talk about 3 examples from 3 separate firms. Rings around things. It's a real thing. Software-defined secure networks, and security frameworks and blueprints that lead to cyber maturity. So this is AT&T's concept, and this is Michael Singer. Michael Singer, Vice President at AT&T, and he's going to talk about rings around things.
If you look at the garage, and it's one of those garages where there's just so much stuff that the car just barely fits underneath the stuff, and you kind of look at that and you just think, if my current environment looks like that, my legacy environment, that's tough. But if I think of being able to put myself in a brand new garage and start with where would I put shelves and how would they work, that's really this approach. Take an application, a business need, take some piece of data, and think, if I could start all over again, what would I do? What would I like to have available? What tools would I like to protect it with? So this idea of having a secure cloud, we call that a ring. Looks a lot like a perimeter, though, I have to say. I actually had somebody call me and they said, so you just want a whole bunch of little perimeters. And I said, well, you got a point there. They're not all going to be the same, though. They're going to be different little perimeters. They're different than each other. And then the other point is, in that original big circle, once the attacker got inside of it, they were accessing everything inside that big circle. If I have a bunch of little circles, little things, and an attacker did find a way to get into that, that doesn't mean they got into all the other little circles that I'm showing you.
Okay, so this entire presentation by the Vice President of AT&T, one of the Vice Presidents, I'm sure they have more, is actually 31 minutes long. The link is here in the handout if you wanted to watch the whole thing. And I'm sorry, what? Oh, why are we talking? I love technology.
Hello. Presenting today is Michael Singer, Assistant Vice President of Mobile, Cloud, and Access Management at AT&T Business Marketing.
Let me see.
Today, Michael is discussing the demise of the enterprise perimeter and providing...
talking about nothing. Okay, I'm sorry. What were you saying?
You said there was a handout.
Oh, in the app that you downloaded? Yeah, the handout, my bio, and the overview of the talk they're all in there. So this concept, rings around things, came out maybe last year sometime, I think, maybe end of 2014, is in a response to the Internet of Things, the bring your own device concept, and to segment and isolate intrusions before they get throughout the whole network. That means putting a security perimeter, a little moat around everything in your network. Now, how that will affect bandwidth, how that will affect data in motion, data at rest, and end-to-end encryption, if you put it in your network, which is always a good idea, we don't know yet. AT&T hasn't revealed that yet. So there's not a lot of information on the rings around things concept, and you may not call it RAT because RAT stands for Remote Administration Tool already, so we can't have that.
But there
yeah.
Rings around things, rings around everything.
Yeah.
Rings around certain things.
Yeah. Well.
That they feel are
Well, right. You want to put. Right. Yeah, but you want to make sure that, if you're going to go all in and you want to protect, the next battlefield, as we call it, and it's already happening anyway, then there better be a budget for it somewhere. I know. Puppies, unicorns, rainbows, right. But, isolating that intrusion can also help you with your forensics to find out what the return signature is on that, or the return address. Anyone seen my little clicker? Yep. Okay. You're following me around the rest of this conference because I lose everything lately. Now, Juniper's vision is a software-defined secure network driven by policy, detection, and enforcement. And then we take any bad signatures and isolate them in a policy engine so that they can't aggregate across the network. And we also have a little video for you on that. Perhaps this will work. Okay.
Yesterday's network security meant firewalls at the boundary of your network, checking anything coming in from the outside, but trusting everything on the inside. The new normal today? Cyber threats come from the outside and the inside. Networks need to be secured at multiple levels. Now, unique in the industry from Juniper Networks is our software-defined secure network, SDSN, a network that adapts to stop threats faster. Now you can aggregate and customize threat feeds in real time from multiple sources, third-party or Juniper, into one common cloud-based feed. Get actionable, location-aware threat intelligence to detect and block threats dynamically and network-wide. Use centralized threat intelligence and cloud-based anti-malware that work together with an open policy engine, all to create security policies that adapt dynamically with the evolving threat landscape. and most importantly, enforce them in real time, consistently across multiple points in the network to mitigate zero-day threats. Go instantly from knowing to doing with an intuitive user interface, actionable intelligence, analytics, and automation capabilities. Security policy management has never been this simple and centralized. It is time for secure networks that make intelligent decisions and stop threats faster. Juniper Networks.
There you go. And we're going to cancel him so we don't have people talking, right? And back.
So, Danny, when I see that, right?
Yeah.
That, and as being a Juniper rep, I see that AT&T construct, I think, is very similar
Yes.
to what you're describing.
Yes.
AT&T, we know, as a global company, is committed to a new network that separates hardware from software.
Yes.
And to allow the software to be more powerful than it was before. So it's standards-based, open architecture
Yes.
to allow them to control more of the network.
Right.
They might be doing it homegrown, that's why we don't know a lot about it.
Right.
So the constructs might be.
Yes, but it is similar. They're all similar from my research and empirical evidence that I've gathered myself is that IBM, which is our next example, Juniper, AT&T, Ciena has a construct of their own as well, is that they're similar, but the techniques may be a little different, as you'll see in the IBM example. I don't know about the cost, if one's costlier than the other. So that's all I can tell you about that. Did that help? Are you sure? Okay. All right. It's my little clicker thing. Huh? So again, Juniper talks about software detection and enforcement. And instead of using bottom-up and top-down approaches to building networks and software, this is more, to me, a 360 dynamic and changing flexible network environment that can easily be modularized to add and subtract nodes, software, hardware, firmware, people, tanks, drones, whatever we need. I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly because I understand we're running out of time. When we talk about the cloud, we use it, Juniper uses it for threat intelligence and advanced threat prevention. And the provider, it could be a private cloud, could be the public cloud provider, connects directly with the enterprise network for our customers. We also talk about conversing with your network, deploying a policy engine that communicates with the entire network, but is also our policy engine machine. I call it the Ghostbusters trap, where you put the ghost in the box so he doesn't get out. And that really works well for current networks. This is IBM's approach to, any questions about Juniper or AT&T? Any questions about Juniper or AT&T? No? Okay. This is IBM's approach to their framework. And what's our time, please, ma'am?
5 minutes. 6 minutes.
6 minutes. How about we say 7 because we started late?
Depends on how people need to get to the next.
Yeah, I know. They use a very broad framework for their holistic network protection. But if you look inside, there's people. We didn't see, I'm not going to run the video because we're not going to have enough time. But they put people here. Professional services, software appliances, cloud and other managed services, governance, risk and compliance, but it's people, data, applications, and infrastructure. all surrounded by 4 pillars of protection. But people is the big one, and that's all I ever hear. It's one of the things I hear about. It's personnel, personnel, personnel.
You know, Dave, from our discussion,
Yeah.
preparing the session, we thought would be relevant to you. We're going to try to laser in on the business aspect of IBM's model.
Yeah.
It's focusing on the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that business is, I mean,
Yeah.
what you do is your business, right?
That's right. It doesn't mean industry. Doesn't mean us. Yeah.
Processes and how you protect those
Right.
by using the people and the framework.
Right. Yeah. Very good. Thank you. They also have under their framework, by the way, this is a red book by IBM. It's 240 pages, free to you to use and download.
They're exhibiting some of that downstairs.
Okay, good, great. It's a red book. They have a series of books. It's a red book, and it is called, I think it's IBM's framework, security framework, and security blueprint toward cyber maturity or security maturity. It's 240 pages, so you'll know it's that one when you find it. This is their blueprint that they use. It's architectural principles segmented into 3 chunks: IBM security frameworks, foundational security management, and security services and infrastructure. Now, those little blue boxes in each of those 3 chunks can change based on your business needs, whatever your business may be. One nice thing about the IBM Holistic Network look is that they have a framework, they have a blueprint, and they have a cyber maturity model. And that the cyber maturity model is also provided in that 240-page thing in a picture. You can have it in a picture. So how are these holistic examples, these 3 industry examples? We look beyond the perimeter for AT&T's rings around things. We look beyond the perimeter to stop threats from infiltrating other network segments and pieces including software and data in motion. Juniper's SDSN disaggregates the software from the hardware, enabling better agility and flexibility and capture of bad signatures. Security frameworks and blueprints from IBM combines business risk-focused framework with technical security maturity and blueprint to use as you use your business model to drive the design of your network. Mark.
Back to Juniper's disaggregation, what that means is, from an SDN perspective, we're looking to separate the control plane from the data plane.
Yeah.
The data plane is their planning and network here, and as a result, we have that SDN controller enable dynamic policy shifts for cyber, as well as dynamically evolve the network, scale out capability, or scale in capability depending on what the mission is, any out cyber threats, and impact on the mission. So that's sort of the philosophy behind it, leveraging those standards. We'll hear more about that as you guys determine the direction.
Right, and accrediting those open standards is a slow process. Using open source anything is a slow process to get accredited on our government and intel and military networks. These are just a few closing thoughts. What I just want you to take away from this is that the security is all of our problem issue. We need to be aware. Our entire workforce needs to be aware. network administrators to, people that are just checking in equipment. Security is everybody's problem. Security is also a people problem. The machines are there. They don't do anything unless we tell them to. Okay. And I also wanted to thank you for coming. And if you have any questions, fire away, or fire at will, or write to me at my Juniper address. But I wanted to thank you for coming. I appreciate it, even old friends who show up out of nowhere. And let me know if you have any questions, please. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you listening to me.